All right, thank you. All right, moving into the Advisory Council Chair report, I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce myself to the group here, the group who was at the initial part, heard this also. But my name is Jessica Parks, and I am the new Advisory Council Chair of this group. I work for Rural Alaska Community Action Program, or Rural CAP as some people know us, as the Planning and Improvement Director. I've been at Rural CAP for a little over 18 years now and have worked in various departments at Rural CAP, but currently have a focus on our strategic planning and improvements, and have been a member of the Advisory Council for about a year and a half now. And I'm really excited to work with this group to move forward and make sure that we are looking at the best practices and the best ways for us to work together and serve the clients that are experiencing homelessness here in Anchorage, and how that has an effect on all of our work and everyone who lives here. I wanted to hand off to Allison here, who is the Vice Chair of the Advisory Council, and let her introduce herself and tell everyone a little bit about her.
Thanks, Jessica. My name is Alice Kerr, and I'm the Executive Director of Covenant House. I don't want to say the same thing that I just said a few minutes ago to the Advisory Council, but what I would say to this group is I'm definitely, it's a life mission to make the experience of homelessness for our young people rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. And it's really not just a statement of it, it's or a tagline. It is by looking at data, by looking at our programs every day, by learning from those with lived experience, and by leading an organization that is committed to collaboration. And so while over my 25 years, I've had various roles with the coalition, I look forward to this year of service as the Vice Chair of the Advisory Council. And I am available and happy to give out contact information should you have any questions directly that you would like to ask. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Allison. I did want to share with this group some of the work that the Advisory Council Executive Committee and then the Advisory Council today started talking about, and the work that is upcoming. This group most likely remembers that we just have finished doing information gathering for the updated gap analysis and community priorities assessments. And so the next step in that is taking that data and making the updates to the Anchored Home Plan, which is the strategic planning document that guides the community priorities and work that we do for the next 5 years. So that work is beginning, and would welcome any input or thoughts people have into how that work happens and the work that we might do around making those updates, and look forward to sharing the progress on that with this group as we move through that process and develop that document. All right, and it looks like next on our agenda, we have our presentation by Helen Renfrew with the Coalition to End Homelessness staff. She is going to be talking to us about emergency rental assistance and evictions.
Sorry, yes, she will be as soon as she gets this to share. Can you all right. So thank you so much, Jessica. My name is Helen Renfrew. For those of you who haven't yet met me or who I haven't yet met, I am transitioning into my role as the program and grants manager for the Alaska Coalition to End Homelessness. Here, I'll let you see my face. But I was originally hired 7 months ago as on the National Low Income Housing Coalition grant as a research and policy analyst. So this is just a little update on the work that's been done over the last 7 months using that grant. These are the 4 broad categories of activities that we've been working on during this time. Gathering information on all rental assistance programs statewide morphed into a much larger conversation about homelessness prevention resources. Since often the trade-off for a rent-burdened household is, do I fix the car or pay rent? Or do I fill the prescription or pay rent? I've got an Excel workbook with 88 different programs identified throughout the state. I haven't reached out to everyone on that list yet, and I'm sure we'll learn about more programs as interviews continue. We also collected statistics on population, race, income, percentage of rent-burdened households, overcrowding, children in poverty, and even more, then slotted that information into different geographic areas. These statistics all existed somewhere else, but they weren't all in the same place. So we put them into one comprehensive data set. The intent is to be able to show a more nuanced picture of what housing instability looks like in different areas of the state. We often talk about demographics in statistics, or we always talk about averages in statistics, but averages don't really tell the full story. As you can see on this slide, according to HUD, the AMI, or the average median income, is just over $77,000 in Alaska. But based on a report that we got that listed annual incomes in zip codes across the state, the lowest annual income reported was $16,875 in 99569, which is a zip code in the Dillingham census area. Whereas the highest annual income was over $155,000 a year, and that was in South Anchorage. So although that $77,000 is an average, the households that make $16,000 are living a very, very different life than those households that are making $155,000 a year. So those were statewide demographics. And then you can also see Anchorage demographics. Of the 167 census tracts in Alaska, Anchorage has 55 of them. The AMI here is 82,512, with the lowest average income reported at 58,000, and again, that highest average income in South Anchorage. Our plan is to use these data points to develop an interactive map that everyone can use to talk about income disparity, poverty, and housing instability in their communities, with overlays that will split the state into census areas or census tracts or legislative districts or any other way we may wish to split this information in our advocacy efforts. One piece of data that I'm still trying to get and would appreciate any ideas or suggestions you may have on how to find it is the average cost to build a house in different regions of Alaska. I know that there are a lot of variables in that request and would be happy to have a conversation about it with anyone who may be able to help with that. The Urban Institute combines statistics on census tracts in the US, such as racial diversity, economic profiles, and COVID vulnerability, to identify areas in each state where emergency rental assistance distribution should be prioritized. They identified 3 Anchorage neighborhoods as having 90% or higher on the prioritization index. In these neighborhoods, about 75 of the people who live there identify as Black, Indigenous, or people of color, and more than 1 in 10 households are overcrowded according to the HUD definition, which is the highest in Anchorage. And based on this information, emergency rental assistance distribution has been a success in Anchorage. There are more zip codes in the Anchorage area than are shown on this slide. This table shows that those that were rated by the Urban Institute, along with the total number of households in the Anchorage area that have received assistance, emergency rental assistance, and how much money from ERA has gone to Anchorage households in need. You can see that those 3 neighborhoods that are ranked as highest in need received the most emergency rental assistance. Those 2 zip codes, representing the 3 neighborhoods on the last slide, have received almost 1/3 of the total $64.6 million that have gone to Anchorage residents in emergency rental assistance so far. The need-based focus hasn't happened in all areas of the state. Anchorage, Mat-Su, and Southeast are overrepresented in both the number of households helped and the amount of aid distributed as compared to statewide statistics when controlling for the percentage of rental households. We're guessing that this is because of the strong, interconnected support networks and social service organizations in these locations, as well as easier access to help and information and better electronic connectivity. During the CDC eviction moratorium, eviction filings fell by 1/3, but evictions were still occurring every week and all over the state. Tenants were only protected from eviction if they gave their landlords a CDC declaration form. If a landlord or their lawyer—
I'm sitting in on my council.
It's okay, it happens. If a landlord or their lawyer filed an affidavit of compliance, which basically said, my tenant hasn't given me that CDC declaration form, then the eviction could proceed. So if the tenant didn't know about the form, they weren't protected. And the landlord only had to produce the form if the judge required it. Preliminary court view research shows that there were plenty of eviction cases filed with no affidavit that went through to an eviction while the moratorium was in place. We did get one report that includes information on past filing dispositions or their results. An analysis of those 3 years worth of eviction cases. Eviction case results shows that in the cases where a clear record of who won could be determined, the landlord or the tenant, the court found in favor of the landlord 99.3% of the time. In those 947 cases where we could definitively determine what the result of the case was, the judge found in favor of the tenant only 7 times. We're able to review a number of full case files of evictions filed by a corporate landlord that owns 3 mobile home parks in Anchorage, as well as ones in 9 other states. One of the tenants was evicted because they were $150 short on their $600 monthly rent. Another imbalance in the system is that large landlords are almost always represented by attorneys, and some smaller landlords may also be legally represented, but tenants are almost never represented by a legal attorney. This table shows all of the eviction filings in each court district over the last 13 weeks. You'll note it's not actually all of them. I hid the columns of those district filings where only 1 case had been filed in the last 13 weeks. So the statistics you see here are only for eviction filings. In order to find out what actually happened or happens in these cases, someone would need to go look up every single one in court view and read through the docket. The percentages of where filings have taken place over the last 13 weeks is consistent with the statistics of filings over the last 3.5 years. Over 60% of all eviction filings happen in Anchorage, and more than 90% of eviction filings happen in our urban areas, which are the ones that are highlighted in blue on this form. So Anchorage, Fairbanks, Juneau, Kenai, and Palmer. Over 90% of all evictions take place in those 5 communities. There's a work group of representatives from Alaska Legal Services Corporation, Alaska Courts, United Way, Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, and ACEH that has been meeting over the last few months to try to stand up an eviction diversion program. A draft structure has been hashed out, and now we're working on ways to fund it. So what is next? Alaska Coalition on Housing and Homelessness and the Alaska Coalition, or the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness, were awarded another National Low Income Housing Coalition grant in order to hire a coordinator to continue this work as I transition more into the program and grants job. We'll want that person to conduct qualitative interviews with ERA recipients. We'll build a website that showcases that interactive map that I spoke about earlier. We'll be developing an awareness campaign because it's cool that we've learned all these things, but we need to be able to tell other people what we've learned. We'll continue to monitor ERA distribution, that's emergency rental assistance, and we'll continue to work to implement an eviction diversion pilot program. And I would like to take this moment to remind everybody on this call that Alaska Housing Finance Corporation is currently in the middle of an open application window. So if you know of anyone who could benefit from 3 months of emergency rental assistance, please make sure that they get, they go to alaskarentrelief.com, I think, and do the eligibility screening in order to be able to have an application link emailed to them. That window closes on October 1. Are there any questions? I don't see any. So I will put my email address in the chat. Anyone who has any questions, wants to have a conversation about this, or could tell me how much it costs to build a house in different parts of the state, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Helen. I will also add that if anyone has any questions that come to them later, there is an opportunity. Well, I guess it's right now. There's other opportunities to ask questions as well, and you can always reach out afterwards, and we can follow up directly with you if you think of something, or if you have any of the information that Helen was looking for, or want to share anything with her on the research or the work that you've been doing around housing.